right, right? It's all good. Today, I just went through the audience and just met most of you, so thank you for letting me take a moment of your time. Because I'm here today, and I guess my primary purpose is to give you an overall knowledge of what your students may be going through in the next couple months coming up, because the FAFSA portal will be opening in the next couple days, the next couple weeks. So again, I'm just going to be able to give you an overall knowledge. I usually, when I present at high school nights, I can easily talk for 2 hours about every detail. Today, we're just going to go over just the basics for you. And if you have any questions after, please feel more than free to come up and ask. And also, I forgot my business cards, but I can, at the end of the presentation, just give you my name in case you need to get in contact with me with a question anytime you have a student in your office. So, all right, I have to figure out where I'm going to stand. I'm a mover and shaker. So, all right, so we have lots to discuss today. First thing I'm going to discuss is what are the changes coming. I'm sure you all know that the feds have been shaking things up a bit, so we have some changes coming. Then we're going to go over the financial aid application process. What is financial need? Types of financial aid? What happens next? And then appeals. So I think I have about 50 minutes to talk about it. So, changes are coming. That is for sure. Beginning with the 17-18 academic year, the FAFSA will start with a new date. For those of you that have been in this business a long time, you know that the FAFSA portal usually opens every year on January 1st. This year, the feds have pushed it back to October 1. In addition, applicants will be able to provide income information from one tax year earlier. And I don't know if anyone's heard of the verbiage prior, but that's what's going to be happening. Normally, when a student completes a FAFSA and their family, they use the prior year's tax information. So going into the 17-18 academic year, we should, if we follow the normal pattern, be using 2016's tax information. And usually what we tell parents and students to do is to use an estimate, because no one's really filed their taxes on January 1st. And so I always tell people, well, please make sure that you use your W-2 forms, your last pay stub. That is all out the window. All right? I'm not even going to mention that anymore. From now on, we're going to go back 2 years for tax information. And I actually think it's going to be very beneficial, but a certain group of families are going to fall into where we're going to discuss at the end, appeals. There's definitely going to be a lot more special circumstance appeals, since we're using 2 prior years' tax information. So as a result of this change, more students and families will be able to complete their FAFSA using information that can be imported via the data retrieval tool, which is the IRS's data retrieval tool. So we won't be using estimates anymore, unless someone has filed for an extension and doesn't have to file until after October 15th. But really, they'll have anywhere between October 15th through whatever school's on-time deadline is to get their taxes done, so they're still going to be able to use this tool. Recent research and the Department of Education's own data suggests that these benefits that they're implementing of an earlier start date are the FAFSA application will be more aligned with the college application process, right? Because for you guidance counselors, when do you start having your students apply for like early action, early decisions? When does that? Is that usually like a December 1 deadline, right?
No, it's earlier.
No, it's earlier. Okay. So for them to be filling out the FAFSA now, it kind of works in conjunction. That's great. Certainty. We're not going to be using estimates anymore. We're going to be using actual data. So the feds are actually going to be awarding aid with better information, which I think is great as well. There's also going to be less pressure to families, because this pressure that they're under when usually the portal opens on January 1, like I work at UConn, so our on-time deadline is March 1. So most families then will have between January 1 and March 1 to get their FAFSA completed. That's no longer going to be the case. They now can start October 1st. Right? That's when the portal opens. So there's a lot of changes coming, but I view them as all really positive changes for students and their families. So now we're just going to go into the financial aid process, just an overview of what the students actually go through when they're going through the FAFSA application. So if you notice, there's 3 different application processes that a student may have to go through. And I want to let you know that completing the FAFSA is the gateway for accessing funds for college students. Approximately 20 million college students complete the FAFSA every single year. All right? So how do you apply? Well, the most common application is the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA. All right? This is a free form. For those of you that don't know, there are 2 different sites out there. There's a free site, and then there's another site. So, and I hate to admit it, because I've been doing this 20 plus years, but my brother-in-law actually one time filed the FAFSA under the wrong website and paid a fee. So I'm like, oh goodness gracious. So anyway, what I always tell families, and you should tell them this fact as well, is when they're completing their FAFSA, if they get to the end and it states, we need a credit card, they need to close that browser right away, because this is the free application for federal student aid. All right? So they need to go to the FAFSA.ed.gov, and that is the free site. They should never, ever, ever pay to complete the FAFSA. I also encourage people to never, ever use an organization to complete the FAFSA, because there are resources for them. You know, you can be a resource. I am a resource, where they can also use what's the college night, the College Goal Sunday. I don't know if any of you have ever utilized that, but that's something that my organization, CAPFA, which is a financial aid professional group, we put together College Goal Sunday, and we actually sit down at different locations throughout the state and help people fill out their FAFSAs. So there are organizations that will help students complete the FAFSA for free. All right? Some of you, if your students are applying to private institutions, maybe going through the College Board or the Css Profile. All right? These 2 forms are totally different. The FAFSA is a free form. Css Profile is a form where they're going to be charged. The FAFSA wants general information. The Css Profile wants very specific information. Such as the FAFSA form, if parents are divorced, only the primary care provider really needs to be on the FAFSA, only their income information. On the Css Profile, both parents' information would be asked. On the Css Profile, they want to know how much home equity a student's family has in their home. The FAFSA does not require that information. So it's a form with 2 different purposes. All right, and the purpose is we get so aid is awarded differently at private colleges versus public colleges, and so that's why the 2 forms are different. There's also some schools who want an institutional application as well. UConn used to have an institutional application, and they no longer have an institutional app. So really what your students should be doing is creating charts. You need to list the schools that they're going to be applying to, and then you need to list their deadlines, because every school has a different deadline. UConn's is March 1, but I know the Connecticut State colleges, I think theirs is April 15th. So there's different deadlines throughout every different college and university, so that's something that students should be aware of. And also, some colleges are going to require all 3 of these forms, where some colleges are going to only require 1 of the forms. So the students need to know which form they're going to be dealing with. So, hopefully most of you know that when you fill out the FAFSA now, every person that's going to be filling it out, parent and student, need to have something called an FSA ID. It used to be a PIN number, and now it's an FSA ID. All right, this FSA ID is something that they're going to use every single year that they apply for financial aid when completing the application, because it acts as an electronic signature. Parents, when they're going through the financial aid process and also want to apply for a Parent Plus loan, they'll be able to use this FSA ID to sign their master promissory notes. And the students, in turn, when they're applying for their Stafford loans and having to do their entrance counseling, they'll need to log into the federal system with their FSA IDs. So this is something that both the student and the parent need to do in order to apply for financial aid. All right, so on the FAFSA, the first section is just a very broad and general information section. So the first section, you're going to go through just demographic information. And I am the person that brings in the FAFSAs at UConn. So I'm bringing in about 33,000 FAFSAs every year. And when students complete this first section, I know which parents have actually done this section and who the student actually completed this section. And what I mean is it always says at the top, you the student, name. And I will tell you, the parents that are completing this FAFSA form, they're going to put their name in, right? It just makes sense. Or it says name and then social security number. They always get it mixed up. And at that point, I cannot bring in their FAFSA. Right? Now, although we are making the change this year, every school across the nation is making the change with the October 1st, bringing the FAFSA portal being open. No one's really changing their admissions process. I know, and financial aid offices are not making changes either. We are still keeping our deadline as March 1. And as I've spoken with other universities throughout the country, they're keeping the same process as well for the financial aid process. Their deadlines are still the same. They're not going to be awarding anything earlier because the FAFSA is open. It's just really a benefit for the students and their families to get their information in and have it be correct. Right? We're still not going to be drawing in FAFSA data until the end of February. And students have until start doing this in October. So it's just really so they can get their information in sooner, but aid offices are not changing their processes, at least at this time. Right? I think it's going to be admission office driven if we do change our processes, but I know at UConn we're not changing our application deadlines either because the FAFSA was opened up earlier. But anyway, so student demographic information, it's super important that the student information always goes in there. And in this section, you also can't use nicknames. So students, like my daughter, a perfect example, her name is Alexandra. And she's actually won awards where they've announced Alexandra Hanlon. And I'm like, and someone has tapped me on the shoulder and said, Allie just got an award. Because I don't know her as Alexandra Hanlon. She doesn't know herself as Alexandra Hanlon. She's Allie. So if she was filling out her FAFSA without me beside her, she would be writing down her name as Allie Hanlon. And it's going to reject at the feds. Because when the feds get the FAFSA information, they send a match to Social Security. And if Social Security, the name on your Social Security card doesn't match to what you put on your FAFSA, the application's rejected. So you have to make sure that all this information is correct. The next thing I want to talk about under the general information is students, sometimes when they're coming in from your high school, will put that they're going to be a graduate student. They're really coming in as a first-year undergrad. They just don't understand that. So just a little bit of guidance. You may have students that you're dealing with that have issues at home, that maybe they've been removed from their parents' home. And if you look at the FAFSA, it clearly states that they're also going to want parent information. Some students can't get their parent information. And under the FAFSA, there's a dependency section where it says, were you born before a certain date? Are you a veteran of the armed forces? Are you married? Do you have any children? Most students will always put no to everything. But some students will have a situation where they're not the average kid and they've been removed from their home. That's where you, as a guidance officer, would probably have to refer that child to the college financial aid office. And we'll talk about dependency appeals at the end. All right, that's just a section within the general information section that students are completing. The FAFSA talks about who is a parent, and I just want to describe the definition that they write. Parents do not include grandparents or other relatives, friends, legal guardians with whom the student may live, but who have not formally adopted the student. So a parent is really just either they're the adoptive or biological parent. That is the only definition of a parent as far as the FAFSA is concerned. Yes?
What about those who have court orders that the grandparent, say, can make educational decisions, but also is financially supporting the student?
Sure. So there's like there's court documentation showing that they're in, exactly, but showing that they're in a legal guardianship.
Right.
Yeah, there is a part under the dependency issue, in the dependency questions that says, are you under a legal guardianship?
Okay.
And they would check yes under that. As long as they have the court documents, they will still have to apply those court documents to the financial aid office, but that's going to make them independent.
So whose tax information would it?
They won't need any parent. They won't need any parent or dependent or any parent or grandparent tax information on the FAFSA. The population is going to be considered independent once they complete the dependency questions. And at that point, they won't even have to go to the parent section. So we briefly talked about when parents are divorced, it's only the parent that has the primary guardianship. I know nowadays we have this shared custody. So, I don't know, is anyone here from the feds? Okay, I see some people back there that I didn't talk to, but ultimately, what I tell parents at my high school nights, as long as I've gone through and asked, is there a Fed advisor here? My little tidbit is, the schools, as a financial aid office, we don't really know. If you're in a shared custody situation, we don't really know which parent you've been with more than half the time, because that's the language on the FAFSA. So what I tell parents is whoever makes less money, that should be the person filling out the FAFSA. Because the ultimate goal is to make sure that you have a high financial need. And we're going to go over financial need in a few minutes. I have to keep track of my time. I get long-winded, so I can talk forever on certain things. All right, so let's move on. The general information section. So now I want to talk about, the next section is where the students and the parents have to complete their income information. This is where it's going to be a huge benefit for some families, really most families. It's a huge benefit for us as a school, awarding financial aid as well, because students are now going to be able to use something called the IRS data retrieval tool within the FAFSA. This is a great tool. It imports information directly in from the IRS. And there's certain data elements that we are required to verify to make sure that what you've put down on the FAFSA is correct. This tool takes those data elements out of the IRS's website or a database and imports it right into the FAFSA. So it imports like AGI, exemptions, your wages line, taxes paid. It's great stuff. This is so great, and it is going to ease a huge burden that we have in our office. But I want to let you know that the IRS data retrieval tool can't always be utilized. So there's another document. For those of you that have been around for a while, you probably realize that we can no longer accept tax returns. We can only get something called a tax return transcript. I do have the website for students that need to get the tax return transcript. I can give it to you after, if you'd like it. I have it on one of the slides, but I don't know if they're putting this presentation out on a website or not, because I think that would be helpful. So that's something I have to find out. But there's certain times where students can't use the IRS data retrieval tool. And I have the list up here, where if the marital status has changed, or there's been an IRA rollover, or the parents have both filed separately, or the parents are unmarried but live together, that population cannot use the IRS data retrieval tool. They would have to be referred to the IRS's website to receive an IRS data transcript, tax return transcript. There's a whole bunch of different transcripts out there. The only thing that a school can accept is the tax return transcript. And again, we're going to be looking for the 2015s. All right, so that's the tips for the student and parent income section. That would be great. All they'll have to do is import data rather than make estimates like they usually have. In the past, this has been the area where, or the section where people make the most mistakes. I think now mistakes will be at a minimum. So how to use the IRS data retrieval tool, we pretty much already went through this. The data retrieval tool will be available on October 1st, which is great. That's the first day the portal opens. The student and the parent both can choose whether or not to transfer their data, but of course we want them to transfer the data. All right, but the data retrieval tool is not available for all statuses. I did go over which ones they can't. Okay, I don't need this. And I do have the website for the data, for the tax return transcript. It's irs.gov sideways or slash individuals slash get hyphen transcript. So that's where we would just send students and parents to go. All right, the next section of the FAFSA is the asset and investment section. I have a lot of questions when I do high school financial aid nights on this section, because no one really knows what they should include and what to include. So up here, I just have a little notes so you know that you don't include the net worth of your house or your home. You don't include retirement accounts or the net worth of a family-owned business employing less than 100 employees. That's a change that happened a couple years ago. For anyone who was self-employed, the feds wanted a net worth of that business. Now they put in the caveat of, unless you have a family business with 100 or more employees, you don't have to put down the value anymore. So that was a huge change for people that are self-employed. And then I always hope that no one lives on a farm. I do go out and talk to Ellington, and I'm always hopeful that no one that owns a farm is in the audience, because farms get really hard, really, really tough. So I will always say, and I hope no one here lives on a farm, and someone will always raise their hand, and then of course they keep me there till like 10 o'clock at night talking to me. So it's always one of those, I'm like, no. I like when I go out to like Rockville, because they don't have farms out there. So that's always really good. Summers, they have farms, so I'm always like tortured by that. So, but when families are filling out the asset and the investment information section, this is what they should include: the cash savings and checking accounts. What I tell people is, I don't know about you, but I have a lot of money at the beginning of the month, and then I pay all my bills, and I don't have that much left over at the end of the month, but I do have something left over. But when determining, ultimately what the FAFSA is, it is a snapshot of what your financial situation looks like on the day that you are completing the FAFSA. I'm going to ask that you take that snapshot out of the picture and really take a look at what your end of the month looks like, or if all your bills are paid by the middle of the month, what that looks like. All right? So cash saving and checking accounts. I want you to know that when students and parents fill out the FAFSA, students, that 20% of the student assets are included in the EFC calculation, meaning we have to really try to make sure students don't really put any information under their section of the assets and investments, because it's weighed much heavier. Because parents have something called an asset protection allowance. Has anyone ever heard of the asset protection allowance for parents? Okay. And this is something when I do a high school night, I actually bring a chart, because it's based on the age of the oldest parent, whether or not the parents are married or single, and it's based on their age. And it creates this, what the feds have created is an asset protection allowance, meaning if they are 53 years old and they have $100,000 worth of assets, only $50,000 is going to be considered. So forth, so on. So let's say if $50,000 is the maximum, and this parent writes they have $50,000 worth of investments or assets, it actually becomes a zero when they're making the calculation. If a student puts they have assets, it's weighed very heavily. So always keep in mind that if you have a parent coming to you saying, what should I do? You know, I have this account for Johnny. If I were you, and you know, it's in Johnny's name, it's in my name, make sure it goes in the parents, under the parents section. Because It's not weighed as heavily. For people that live in investment properties, so let's say you live in a duplex, when you figure out how much of an investment value you have, the family would take the other half of the investment property that they don't live in, take half of the mortgage that they still owe on the building, and that would be their net worth, of the net value of that, all right? And I'm sure most of you know a lot of people have these 529 plans. And they have them for a multitude of children. So if they have 3 children, they have 3 accounts. This form clearly states they want the amount of the entire 529 plan that you have. How much money do you have? Include all children. I'm here to tell you, they have no way of tracking that. So when I talk to families, I tell them, if you're filling out a FAFSA for Johnny, and Johnny has $20,000, and you also have it for, Allie and Timmy too, each 20, don't put down 60,000, put 20. There is no way, no way. And when they're doing the verification process, we never ever ask for that information. So again, we're trying to keep the EFC as low as possible for these people so they have a high financial need. Right? And that's just one of the tidbits where eventually probably the feds will come up with a way to track it, but at this point there is no way for them to track it. So that's what I always advise people. So additional tips for the income information section. Where am I? This is untaxed income. When people have untaxed income, there's certain things they should include and there's certain things they shouldn't include. It's too small, I have bad eyes, so. They should include their IRA or pension contributions if they're receiving workman's compensation, untaxed disability, any child support received, that would go under untaxed income. But you don't include your unemployment compensation or your untaxed Social Security benefits, anything that's in rollovers. All right? When a family has a rollover on their tax return, they should never ever do the IRS data retrieval tool. Because if you think about it, you have a rollover, it shows up in your AGI. And if you're rolling over $100,000, your AGI is going to be exaggerated. So they should never use the IRS data retrieval tool in situations like that. They should always request their tax return transcripts and then write rollover next to where the IRA distribution is. So we know as a financial aid office to take that information out of the AGI, which also lowers, which actually lowers their EFC, which then increases their need. All right. So, when completing the FAFSA, these are just, different things that happen. So school codes need to be added. You know that they can add up to 10 school codes. If they are applying to 15 schools, they should complete their first application with the 10 schools, let the federal processor process it, then they should go back in, erase the 10 schools and add 5 more, re-sign their application, and then send it off again. Did I lose anybody on that? Yeah. So let's say a student wants to apply and have their FAFSA information sent to 15 different schools. The application on the FAFSA only has data elements for 10 of those schools. So they can fill in their 10 schools, electronically sign their applications with their FSA IDs, then the federal processor processes that application. Once they have a confirmation that that application's been processed, they can log back into the FAFSA, delete the first 10 schools, add the next 5 schools, re-sign the application with the FSA ID, resend it to the feds. All right. That way, 15 schools will get the student's FAFSA information. Okay? What else? Housing plan. I would always encourage students to put that they're going to live on campus. Because one thing we're going to find out in the next slide is one of the elements to determine financial need is cost of attendance. So if a student says they're going to say that they're going to live on campus or off campus, then their cost of attendance is going to be higher. If they put down they're going to live with a parent, their cost of attendance is much lower. All right? So I always encourage students to put on their housing plan if they're going to live on or off campus. All right? So, what time is it? All right, we're doing good with time. So, the student goes through this whole FAFSA, which I know I just blew by. And like I said, I can usually talk about it for 2 hours. So, I really took just the absolute nitty-gritty and threw it out at you. So, what is financial need? So, this is the component in determining what financial aid students are eligible to receive. So, when discussing the first component is cost of attendance, or COA. All right? And this component consists of 2 components, direct and indirect costs. Direct costs are billable expenses, things that you're going to see on the fee bill, tuition and fees, room and board. All right? Indirect costs are educational expenses that a student's going to incur. They're just non-billable. So transportation expenses, books, shampoo and conditioner, pens and pencils. All right, we threw it all in there. The second component of determining financial need is the expected family contribution. This is the magic number that we come up with after completing the FAFSA, or the federal processor comes up with it. And it's completely a magical number. If you've been dealing with children all these years and families, you know everyone has these crazy numbers. All right, it's totally magical, and if I were to do a hand calculation, it's about 12 pages long of all different data elements to determine a family's EFC. Hand calculation, they used to do that years ago. I don't know how they ever did it successfully. So, it is a measurement of a family's financial strength and is made up of 2 parts, of a parent and a student contribution. The EFC is not a prediction of how much extra cash a family might have or an assumption of how much you ought to be able to pull from income, current income. This magical number does help our office, the financial aid office. It helps us to determine how much need-based aid a student can have. All right. I want you to note, though, that schools generally are not able to meet 100% of need. And the financial need sets the maximum amount that a student can receive in need-based aid. Need-based aid is subsidized loans, federal work study, grants, university grants, and federal grants. And then we come up with this financial need. So, I have this chart that just basically shows financial need. We have the first on the left-hand side, we have the cost of attendance, the COA, that's the variable. That again is direct and indirect costs. I want to let you know too that when even you are talking to admissions offices versus financial aid offices, we will give you 2 different figures for cost of attendance. The admissions department is just going to talk to you about direct costs, tuition and fees, room and board. We as a financial aid office are going to award aid up to the cost of attendance, but our cost of attendance includes direct and indirect costs. All right? So our budgets are always going to be about $4,000 higher than what the financial aid office, or than what the admissions office is actually going to tell you it costs. So I just want you to keep that in mind. So cost of attendance is a variable. It depends on what school you're attending, what your cost of attendance is going to be. But your EFC is going to follow you everywhere. That's the constant, no matter where you go. So your need is going to be different. Sometimes students will be like, oh, you know, so-and-so just awarded me $20,000 worth of grants, and UConn only awarded me 5. All right, well, you just applied to Yale that just gave you $20,000. Their cost of attendance is about $40,000 more than an in-state student at UConn. So that's basically the long and the short of it. So cost of attendance minus EFC, a variable and a constant, always gives you a variable. Okay? All right. So different types of aid. I'm sure for most of you that have been around a long time, you're aware of all the different types. But there are many different types of financial aid, and most students do receive a combination of these forms of aid. All right, scholarships. Scholarships are merit-based. All right. You also don't ever want a student to complete an application for a scholarship scholarship and pay. Because you don't want to have to pay to try to get some free money. I have to let you know, as a financial aid officer, we refer students that contact us about scholarships, we refer them to you. All right, so you refer people to us, but we are referring people to you. We are asking that you be their best resource when it comes to scholarships. I tell students all the time, your guidance counselors know you the best. They know your academic successes, they know what you've done with community service, they know you. They should know what scholarships are out there that you can apply for. Are you all going to shoot me or what? Is that okay to say? Okay, good. So, because I've been saying it for a long time. So, that's what I tell them. And so you know, and scholarships, there's the outside scholarships, which is what I'm referring them to you to find out what scholarships in the community are out there for them to apply for. I know my daughter got a few scholarships on class night. I referred her to the guidance office. They knew that she was athletic and she did certain things with that athleticism, and she received a couple scholarships because of that. UConn, as all colleges and universities, also offer merit-based scholarships at the time of admission. I need you to know that the financial aid office is just a record keeper for these scholarships. It would be a conflict of interest for us to award scholarships and also be awarding aid to students. So we have at UConn, and I know most other universities and colleges, their admissions department awards merit-based scholarships at the time of admission. Yes?
And they do not have to have filled out the FAFSA to get awarded that.
That is correct. That's correct. These scholarships are not something, there is one scholarship that I'll mention in a minute, and God bless you, especially in Connecticut, where students have to fill out a FAFSA. But most scholarships, students don't have to fill out FAFSAs, at least for the merit-based, in the admissions office. Grants are also need-based. So students have to fill out a FAFSA in order to see if they have any grant eligibility. There's federal grants, there's institutional grants. Here in Connecticut, you as guidance counselors probably know that we have the Roberta B. Willis Scholarship. It used to be the Capital Scholarship. Yep, they just changed the name. So we are also, as an office, going to refer students to you to see if they can get an application, because the Department of Higher Education has told us that the applications are being housed in your offices. Okay? Yes? I see some blank faces. All right. So those are grants. There's loans out there. There's loan opportunities for students. There's subsidized loans, there's unsubsidized loans, there's Parent Plus loans, there's alternative loans. Credit-based loans are the Parent Plus loan, which is where a parent applies for a dependent student to help cover the cost of attendance. That loan's based solely on credit. There's also alternative loans where their interest rates are mostly variable, and the student is the borrower, and a parent would be a co-signer. All right. There's the subsidized and unsubsidized Stafford loans, which is a loan that's solely in the student's name. All right, it has fixed interest rates, as does the Parent Plus loan. All right, so there's different loan opportunities out there for students. There's also employment opportunities. I have so many freshmen that bank on work study. There's two different funding types at colleges and universities. There's federal work study, and then there's student labor, let's call it. I know, doesn't that sound terrible? I could call it institutional labor too, but I don't know which sounds worse. So I just go with the student labor. And what it is, it's just two different funding types at different colleges. The feds, if a student's awarded work study, the feds pay 75% of the student's hourly wage. So that's great for all of our operating budgets. But there's also institutional labor, or student labor, which is where if a student's employed at a college and they weren't awarded work study, then the money comes out of the operating budget of the department that hires them. All right? At UConn, we have over 8,000 student employees. They help us run the place. Without them, I don't know where we'd be. In our office alone, we have over 30. And a majority, 2/3 of the students working on campus are under student labor. Right? But I have parents calling me all the time, Johnny was not awarded work study. Don't panic, you can still get a job on campus. Right? So that's just a little tidbit for you guys. All right, so basically I have the summarization of the whole process. The student completes the FAFSA. They hit send. The federal processor at that point creates the EFC, which is that magical number. They then send the magic number along with the student aid report to the student. The student should always, always, always look this over. Look it over for errors. Sometimes, although now that we're going to use the IRS data retrieval tool, maybe we won't have this as big of an error, but a student maybe will have made $1,000 and they add an extra 0, or they add an extra 2 zeros. And now they have this massive EFC, right? And that EFC gets sent to the school, and if they're not chosen for a process called verification, we believe it and we award them all unsubsidized loan funds, right? So it's really important that when a student gets their student aid report back, they review it for accuracy. And then this expected family contribution number is also sent to every school where the students put down the school code. All right? So we get it in our office. And then what we do is we send, once the admissions department tells us Johnny has been accepted, we then create an aid package for them. This process is not going to change for us. I know most colleges and universities always have them out by mid-March, right? Is that what you find? I know we're still going to continue to do that, at least for the upcoming year. Mid-March is when we're going to be sending out award packages to students. And you also probably mostly know that everything's done by email. So we don't send out paper letters anymore. I would assume not many schools do. Does anyone work with a school or have seen a university or college recently that sends out the paper form? Not really? Yeah, so everything's done electronically. All right, and then at that point, we've created an aid package. We send out that award notification. The award notification is going to consist of need-based, non-need-based aid, depending on that financial need calculation of the cost of attendance minus the EFC, gives you that number, and then we award aid. For high-need students, they receive Pell Grants. They receive university grant dollars. They could receive work study. They're going to receive subsidized loans, unsubsidized loans. Hopefully you've had them apply for scholarships, and they're going to receive some scholarship money too. Right? So it's all out there, and it will all be on this financial aid package. Some students, about 30% of the population, is going to be randomly selected for a process called verification. And what this is the federal government has chosen them to make sure that the information they put down in their FAFSA is correct. And it's our job to make sure that we review the file. All right? With the IRS data retrieval tool now in place, where a majority of the students are going to be able to complete their FAFSAs using the IRS data retrieval tool, the information is already accurate because it came in from the feds. That is so easy. It's so easy for the student, and it's so easy for us. If you can't use the IRS data retrieval tool, that's when students and their families are going to have to request their tax return transcripts. All right? And then at that point, we take the tax return transcript and we review the information to make sure it's accurate on their FAFSA. If not, we change their aid package based on a new EFC. Something that I think is going to be really super big this year, I spoke at UConn's open house this weekend, and I probably had about 10 different families come over to me, and I spoke with about 400 people. As you know, we're using prior for this academic year, 2015. I have people coming up to me saying, I have a change. My 2016 is going to look much different. So I think this is where people are going to come to you and say, all right, I know I'm using 2015s, but my 2016 mom is unemployed, or my parents are getting divorced. what do I do? What they're going to do is they're going to contact each aid office that they're, whatever college or university they're applying to. And they're going to have to share this information with each aid office. So we can then go in and determine if we're going to be able to help them, if their EFC will be lowered based on the information that they're giving us. And at that point, we as a financial aid office request document after document after document, so we can do a projected 2016 information on their file. So if you have anyone that comes to you that says, my mom's lost her job, or dad has moved out, you definitely want to get in contact, or you want them to get in contact with our office. Right? And that's going to be the biggest hurdle that we're going to deal with as far as this prior happening. Okay? So I know I briefly talked about dependency override, so this is something else just within appeals. If you have a student that you're working with because either they're within a legal guardianship or Department of Social Services has removed them from the home, if their parents are abusive or their parent has been incarcerated, you definitely want to have that student contact aid offices as well, because there is an appeal process where we may perhaps be able to take the parent out of the equation and make it so the student can become independent and we can just use their information. So if you have any student that you think may be in a situation like this, then you would definitely need to refer them to each aid office. Right? Because we can't help them. They just need to self-identify themselves because we don't know who's out there that needs that help. Okay? So other than that, I've actually done this right on time. I think we're supposed to stop at 2:20 and it's 2:17, so I am like amazing. And but does anyone have any questions? Yes.
Just for the parents who feel they won't qualify, they won't be eligible for any aid, is there any benefit at all or any reason they should go ahead and fill a FAFSA out?
Oh my gosh, that is a great question. I actually just had a dad in my office just recently that didn't think he was going to qualify for anything, didn't fill out the FAFSA form, and then just became unemployed. And now he has to go through this entire process. Now, the process doesn't take that long, but when you're in dire straits to pay a fee bill, because your child can't go to the library, they can't go to everyone's all worried about the kid can't go to the gym. So filling out a FAFSA back when you initially should have would have been a great thing for them to do. So for those parents that don't think they're going to qualify, they should still fill it out. Because the student's going to get an aid package, and if they don't like what's on that aid package, they can decline everything. I also personally, watching students, I mentor students in academic trouble. That's another thing I do at UConn. And the students that hold a little bit of responsibility for their education do much better. So for a student to have a subsidized loan in their name where the government's paying their interest, no interest is accumulating, they don't pay it back till 6 months after they graduate, that's a good thing for that student. They're holding a piece of their education. So I think everyone should have to fill out a FAFSA. Yep. Oh, I know you had a question.
What is the average processing time? You said, and going back to, made me think of this when you said if you're applying to 15 schools, you do 10, wait for it to be processed, then do another 5. Like, what is?
You know what, the feds are so great. I know my daughter's gone through the application process, so I've actually been able to see firsthand, because my daughter's a senior in college, and it's like 3 to 5 days for each transaction. That's really quick. And now, I mean, if you think about January 1st, and then you've got deadlines in March 1, it may not be that quick. But now that we're talking October, 3 to 5 business days is absolutely nothing. 3 to 5 business days for each transaction. Mm-hmm. Yes?
International students.
Oh, yeah. And we have them. Do you have them where you are?
Yes.
Yeah, we have them at UConn. International students are a tough population because they're here on the premise, at least as far as the financial aid office is concerned, that they came over with enough cash to be able to do what they need to do. That's not always the case. So the only thing I can do to help international students, they can't fill out a FAFSA unless they're an eligible non-citizen, and they know if they are or not. The only thing I can offer assistance with is via the alternative loan process, where they would have to find a U.S. cosigner to sign a loan on their behalf. That's my only option for them. Or the payment plan, the bursar's office offers a payment plan, but most of them can't afford that. So it again, is just the alternative loan process. All right, yes?
On the household income, if you're remarried, does
Excellent, oh my gosh, and that was in my notes and I didn't talk about it, so thank you. So if you have a situation where, I'm divorced, but I'm not remarried. So, but let's say I was, and then I'm filling out the FAFSA for my son. Myself and my new spouse would have to be included on the FAFSA. Because, and the philosophy is, because I have every divorced family argue this fact with me, and I'm just the messenger, but what I explain to them is the Department of Education wants a snapshot of what that household looks like. And as far as they're concerned, Johnny benefits because his stepfather is in that house, because mom doesn't have to struggle as much. You know, there is more money in that household, more than likely. But this also comes back to, if you find that you're in a divorce situation, whichever parent makes less money should be filling out that FAFSA, because there is no way that I know if Johnny is spending 51% there and 49% there, or vice versa. There's no way I know it. You are telling me. You are the authority. So if you're telling me that Johnny's with his dad, who is not remarried, and dad's household makes less than mom's, I'm going with dad's stuff. Yes?
Do you happen to have like a one-page flyer of like, who's my parent? Because I feel like there's so many. We work with so many different of these scenarios. Like
Sure.
parents never married, live with mom, but I mean, there's just so many different.
Yeah, you know what, I don't,
Scenarios.
there's usually someone will contact me, and then I'll just go through all of it with you. If I ever find anything, you were at Newington, were you?
No,
where were you?
we're in Hartford.
Oh, in Hartford.
Yeah.
If you can give me your name at the end, and if I ever come across something, I promise I'll send it to you.
Okay.
Because I'm working on this right now, because I'm about to enter high school presentation time. So if I come across anything, I could definitely send you that. All right. Well, let's hope for some sunshine and less humidity. And thank you all. Have a